Hello, this is Andrew from Seemu Apps, and in this tutorial I'll be showing you how to use NS Notification Center. So just set up a blank single view application. We're just going to name it Shoot NS Notification. Go next and create that. So I'm just going to set up the storyboard here, and then I'll show you the reasons why I've set it up this way. So just go over to your storyboard. And then you need to create a navigation controller. Delete the root view controller it creates on the right. Get the navigation controller and just drag that over to be next to the default one. To change the default root controller, grab the arrow, drag it to the left of navigation controller. On navigation controller, click it, hold in the control key, drag it to here, and go root view controller. And we're also going to add in one more view controller. So add that in here. And once that's added in, we're going to add a button and some labels and images to our first view controller. So just drag that button here. I'm going to name the button Set City. Add in a label that I'm going to name it Welcome to Sydney. And we're also going to add in some images. So I've already downloaded some from Google Images named Sydney and Toronto, so you can find them on there. Just drag them into our supporting files. We'll copy them in. And from here, we'll just drag a copy of the Sydney. And we'll set that mode to scale to fill. Make it a bit smaller. So from the Set City button, click that, hold down the control key, drag that over to our third view controller on the very right, and make that a show action seg. Now on this view controller here, the right one, we're going to add two buttons. First one will be Sydney, the second one will be Toronto. So basically what this notification center is going to do, on the first view controller here, we're going to have some code in this particular view controller here. And that code is going to change as text to say welcome to Toronto and change the image to an image of Toronto. They click on the Toronto button in this second view controller here. Otherwise, if they click on the Sydney button here, it's going to remotely run some code in this view controller to change it to the Sydney image. So basically, it's code in this view controller, and we want to run it remotely from a complete separate part in our application. So this can be applied to SpriteKit as well. If you're using that, you can run it remotely. So the first thing we do, we need to go to File, New, and go File. Create a new touch class. Make sure it's a subclass of UI view controller. Then name Set City. Go Next. And go Create. Once that's created, go back to the storyboard, and I'm going to connect everything up. So the first thing to do is to set this view controller on the right as Set City. So under this tab here, under Class, make sure it's set to Set City. And now we're going to connect everything up. So the first one to do is our first view control, the first thing the user is going to see. So with this selected, click on the Assistant Editor up in the top right. Click on the label and drag that. Set that to Label City. And then we're going to do the same thing for the image. So click that, Control and drag, and do Image City. Connect that up. So close that down, and we'll just also make this label a bit more bigger. We'll also just center the text on it. Okay, so now that we've connected this first view controller up, we're going to connect the Set City view controller up, the buttons. So just click on that, go to the Assistant Editor again. From Sydney, hold in the control key, drag it in here, go Set Sydney. From the connection, change it to an action. The type will be UI button. Go Connect. and repeat the same steps for Toronto. Go connect. Oops. So I just accidentally didn't change the connection, so make sure that is set to action. Okay, so now that we've got that set up, we're going to do our code. So close down the assistant editor and go over to view controller. The first thing we're going to do is set up our notification center items to run the code. So what we'll do, we'll set the code to actually change a label in the city. So go function set city Sydney brackets notification colon NS notification brackets and do some curly braces. Do function set city Toronto notification colon NS notification, do curly brackets again. Under set city Sydney, we'll go label city.name.text equals Sydney, and also image city.image equals UI image, name Sydney.png, the commas of course, and we'll copy this over and do the same in Toronto. So Toronto and Toronto.png. Okay, so this is the actual code here that's going to change the label and the image in this first view controller. So we're going to want to access this code from the select city view controller here, and we're going to do that by using the NS notification center. So to set that up in our view below, we need to do NS notification center default center add observer, and the one you want to choose is the one here. So it's observer and the object selector, then name and object. So the observer will be self, and the selector is gonna be the name of one of these functions down here. So the selector is gonna run these functions, run this code. So the first one we'll do is set city Sydney. And make sure at the end of it you do put a colon in here as well, otherwise it won't work. And then name, this is going to be like a unique identifier to call this function from anywhere in the app. So we'll do set city Sydney ID for this, and the object will be nil. So this selector here, this is going to call this code here to change the text and image to Sydney. And this ID is a unique identifier to this observer, and by calling this name here, it's going to run the set city Sydney code. So we'll copy that over and do the same for Toronto. Just changing that in here. So set city Toronto, remembering the colon at the end here, and we'll do set city Toronto ID. Okay, so we've set that all up in here in this view controller. So we're going to go over to the set city view controller we made, and we're going to call that remotely from here. So we've connected up our two buttons. The first one is set to Sydney, and the second one is set to Toronto. So to actually call that, what you do, you go NS notification center default center host notification name, make sure it's this one here. The name will be set city Sydney ID, and the object will be nil. So I'll just go back to our view controller, make sure we've got the name right. I'll just copy that over. It's very easy to make typos. Okay, and we'll copy this over and do the same for Toronto. So copy that in there, going back to our view controller, grabbing the Toronto name here, so the unique identifier, copying that back into here. So if we run the app, I'll show you exactly what it does, and I'll step through the code again just to clarify how it actually works. Okay, so by default we've got welcome to Sydney, an image of Sydney. We'll go set Sydney. So this is a second view control here, and we'll click on Toronto, and that's going to crash. So I'll just figure out why it's going. Okay, so I just figured out why it's crashing, and the reason is I made a small typo here. So set city Toronto doesn't match up with this function name here correctly. So I was trying to call something that didn't exist. So we'll copy that over, and we'll run that again, and we should see it working. Okay, so go set city, click on Toronto, we'll go back, and we can see it called the code in this view control here to change it to Toronto. So we go set city, go back, still Toronto, but if we go set city, click on the Sydney button here, go back, it's called the code to change the image to Sydney. So this can be used in any sort of application, and also Sprite Kit. So stop that. So basically, in this view controller here, this NS notification center adds an observer. That observer can be called by using the name here. And once it's called, it's going to run this selector code here, which runs this function in the view controller here. Make sure you've got the notification here, otherwise it won't work correctly. So to call these notifications that were set up in the set city view controller, on our set city button, it calls a set city Sydney ID here. And on the set Toronto, it calls a set city Toronto here. So basically, that posts a notification by this name, and it looks anywhere in the app, and if it finds something, which it does here in the view controller for these names, it will run that selector code here. So you can download the source code for this tutorial below.
Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe and leave any feedback below. Also check out our website, Facebook and Twitter by clicking or tapping any of the buttons on screen.